So this is actually the second part of a training that we did a week ago on Tuesday, but don't worry if you didn't attend that training on Tuesday. All of this information is still relevant. We'll make sure you have a copy of that first training, and you'll know everything you need to know from this training. So don't worry if you missed the first one. So the reason we are holding these trainings is because we feel like there's a lot of really great stuff happening in Iowa, and these American Rescue Plan funds, and tonight you'll hear us using the acronym ARPA. So these ARPA funds that are being infused into our communities, this is really something we want to celebrate, we want to recognize, and we want to make sure that folks are talking about this as we head into the summer and as we head into the election. And so Progress Iowa, Katie, our messaging director, and myself, we're working on putting these trainings together to help folks better understand where these ARPA funds are going, and then how we can talk about that, have conversations with our neighbors, our friends, but then also what we're going to talk about tonight, which is putting this into letters to the editor. So writing letters to the editor, that's the main focus of why we're here tonight. If you want to go to the next slide, Katie. And I think we covered this. So introducing yourself in the chat, your name, if you're with an organization, and then the county that you live in. So one of the things we're actually going to do tonight is I'm going to show you how to look up those ARPA funds, so you can see, like, in your county where those American Rescue Plan funds are going. And you can go to the next slide, Katie. So just a couple of norms. We are a small group tonight, but as we're speaking, just make sure that you're muted. If your phone is ringing or your dog is barking in the background, we don't necessarily need to hear that. If you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. And after Katie and I are done presenting, we'll answer those questions and we'll have a conversation. We'll make sure that we address those. So the last part then is just, we'll have kind of a guided conversation. We have some questions we want to ask you afterwards, because we want to hear your input too, and we want to hear your feedback. So we'll share those questions with you after the presentation as well. And then you can go to the next slide, Katie. So one of the things that I hear from a lot of people is, why write a letter to the editor? Newspapers are dying. It's something a lot of people don't read. Today, a lot of our newspapers are digital, and they are also in print. So we know that when we attach those links to Facebook or to Twitter, we can share them really easily. And so we can get a lot of mileage out of those letters to the editor. We can get a lot of mileage out of those op-eds. The other thing is, we can actually put a value on those letters to the editor. So if you go to a newspaper and you want to take out an ad, it's going to cost you money, right? It's going to cost you, we just went through this in my county. It costs you about $90 to put a notice in the paper, and that's just print with like no graphics. It can get up to $500. Letters to the editor are free advertising. This past year, the letter writing group that I work with, we have had over 100 letters published so far since January. The ad equivalency of those letters is $345,000. Right? A lot of groups and county parties don't operate on a $500,000 budget. So if you can get letters to the editor, that's free advertising. So we can quantify what these letters to the editor, what their value is and how important they are. Timeliness is important. A lot of counties now are having public meetings, they're having input sessions, and we're starting to see how those ARPA funds, or those American Rescue Plan funds, are being allocated and how they're being used in cities and counties. So we want to make sure that we're talking about that. We want to make sure that people know where these funds are going and how it's benefiting you and me and others in our community. Local papers are always the best to submit, especially with these topics, but also statewide papers, the Des Moines Register, the Cedar Rapids Gazette. In my district where I live, the first district, the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier is another one, and then the Mason City Globe Gazette. So knowing those newspapers that are in your district is really important. So you can get it in the big papers that reach a larger audience, but also in your smaller local papers too, because those are the folks that are going to be directly impacted by these ARPA funds, or these monies that are coming into the community. And then next slide, Katie. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Katie and let her introduce herself, and she's going to take away this next part of the presentation.
Great, thank you. It looks like I didn't mute myself, so here I am. All right, so we put together some messages and tested them on an Iowa audience to figure out how we should talk about Biden's American Rescue Plan Act. So several messages, we used all the information we had, put a few messages together, and the two that came back that worked the best were kind of titled them ARPA helped, and then the other one was corporate greed. So we measured the success of these plans by asking a few questions about relevant and well-known policymakers. So we asked about Biden, who led the push for the bill and signed it. And we also asked questions about Senator Grassley, who voted against it. And when people read our messages and then answered these questions, across every demographic, we were able to see that these two messages really moved Biden's favorability up and Grassley's prospects as a candidate went down. So these things told us that our messages were actually working to help, say good things about the ARPA bill and convince folks that it was a good thing in their community. The corporate greed one was the most persuasive. It increased Biden's prospects as a ballot choice and worked across party lines, and including with like men and moderates and low turnout voters. So both across the board and then specifically in those small subgroups. So at Progress Iowa, Amy and I kind of talk about these parts of a message in different ways. And I think you'll see a lot of organizations trying to message in this way, but we follow a couple formulas from Anant Shankar-Asario at the Research Collaborative that pull from both, a formula of how to talk about our values, leading with a value, and also using unifying language. So we always start with a value because we want to pull people in. We know we can't just throw facts at them and change their mind. We need to use language that they already accept and believe in. So we want to start with a value and talk about what we care about. That's a big thing that we're really pushing lately, is just to make sure people are talking about what they're for, so that we can actually be of more substance and get an emotional pull with our neighbors and the audience we're trying to engage. Unifying language, this is really helpful for fighting back a lot of the wedge issue language, the disinformation, and some of the things that are really meant to be distractions and to isolate groups of us, things around identity politics and just also mean-spirited legislation out of certain members. So really utilizing, with your value, talking about how no matter our race, our background, or if we're 10th generation or a newcomer, we all want our communities to thrive and be able to afford basic necessities. Those are things we can all agree on. And I like to think, at 8 in the morning, at 5 at night, at midnight, we're all thinking about and worried about the same exact things. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you live. You need food on the table. You need a roof over your head. So then the other big part of this is defining the opposition to that value. Like, what is standing in the way of that value? Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a group of people, maybe it's a policy. And so you want to make sure that it's really clear what's blocking access to that value that you're fighting for, and kind of naming it as a barrier that you can get over, not something that, you can't get through. And then you're really empowering yourself and your neighbors in the end. You're providing a solution and you're tying it to the current events, and you're providing the outcomes that value means. And so you're really reminding folks that we have the power to elect the leaders who will deliver. We did it once. Biden delivered, Axne delivered. We can do it again. We can keep getting these great benefits for our communities. So these messages, the corporate greed message, as always, that value up at the top. Iowans know we all deserve a fair shot, but today that's just not possible. Wealthy corporations that don't pay enough are jacking up prices and calling it inflation. Biden knows we need the cash. His American Rescue Plan money went straight to working families, helping us afford groceries during the pandemic. It's even increasing childcare, helping us get back to work. If this bill failed, Iowans would have struggled even worse, but Senator Grassley still voted against it. This bill proves we can get what we need. We simply need leaders who will put working families first. So just kind of tying all of the things in that bill that help people out back to their pocketbooks and the supporters that made it happen, and what stood in the way. So that second message, the American Rescue Plan helped, again, with a value. Iowans are giving people, but lately we've had less to give. Thankfully, President Biden's American Rescue Plan put money in our pockets and helped with healthcare and essential services. Biden's bill sent $3.9 billion in relief checks, expanded the child tax credit, provided nutrition assistance, and lowered health premiums. Thanks to those who voted yes, Iowans went to the doctor without fear of going broke. Senator Grassley didn't look out for us. He voted against this bill. We need leaders who will support bills like the American Rescue Plan to help us help each other. And then just kind of a note on that, I do only have 100-word count when I test these, so they are pretty brief. Back to Amy.
And we're gonna kind of switch things up a little bit here because I need to share my screen. Just a second here. This is where we need like some really good interlude music or something. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, so what I want to talk to you a little bit about is how to take what Katie shared with you, that really great messaging that she has that we've tested. We know that it works. We know that we have the ability to move voters, and then how to put that into a letter to the editor or how to talk about it. One of the things that I want you to think about is when you're talking about messaging, think about something that is tangible, not just, Biden's American Rescue Plans are an investment in our community. They are, right? But that's not tangible. Like I can't necessarily see exactly what that is or exactly what that means. So we want to be really clear and we want to be really specific when we talk about what these funds are being used for, right? We want people to drive through Decorah, Iowa and see a big expansion in sunflower daycare, right? We can pinpoint that. We know that that is something that's tangible. We want people to drive through, I'm using examples from where I live, but Spillville, right? And see wastewater treatment. Like this is something tangible that they can see in their community. So we want to talk about those specifics. So where I want to go next is I want to talk to you about how you can find these ARPA funds and how they've been allocated in your community. So I'm going to go ahead and click on ruralorganizing.org. They are a partner that we worked with last week when we presented the introduction to what these ARPA funds or these American Rescue Plan funds are. So they have this really great website, this really great tool that helps you find where these American Rescue Plans are. So all of this will be shared with you at the end. So you'll have all of this information, you'll have all of these instructions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to this www USA spending, which is down here. So I'm going to click on that. And so what I want to do is I want to find out where these funds are being allocated. So the first place that I'm going to go is to award search, and then I'm going to go to advanced search. And like I said, don't worry if you're not writing all of this down, you're going to get all of these instructions and they're all on that website. So don't worry if you're not catching everything in the notes. So as I'm doing this, I am going to go over here to the left-hand side of the screen where it talks about filters. And there are a couple of things that I want to go through and I want to filter. So what type of awards am I looking for? I'm looking for grants, and I'm looking for direct payments. These are those monies that were given to communities as part of the American Rescue Plan Fund. The next part that I want to look at is location. So I'm going to go here to recipient location. And I'm going to go ahead and select the United States. And I'm going to select our state, which is Iowa. And then I am going to select my county. I live in Fayette County. And you can also select a city. So for example, if you live in a larger metro area, you would probably want to select your city versus going through and doing this for the entire county. And then where I'm going to look next is down here for this disaster emergency fund code. And this is all the different types of COVID-19 spending. The one I'm looking for is V. And V is the American Rescue Plan Act, those ARPA funds of 2021. And then I'm going to go ahead and submit my search. And so what I can see then on my screen, oh, I know what I forgot to do. I forgot to save it. Let me go back to search. And Fayette County. I forgot to add the filter. That's really important because it'll give you everything from the state of Iowa if you don't. Okay. Let's try this again. Okay, grants, direct payments, location, United States. As with any government website, this is super frustrating. And then Fayette County. And there we go. I'm going to add the filter. Let's see, did I do the award type? This is my letter V. Yep. COVID-19. I just want to make sure I did grants. Yep. Okay, so hopefully this will work this time because I did put that filter in there. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I live in Fayette County, and what I can do then is I can go to these different recipients and I can see how much money they received. So the first one here is grants. And I can see the college, Upper Iowa, I can see they received almost $7.5 million. And then the other place that I can go is this tab right here, which is direct payments. And these direct payments are the ones that are going to the cities. These are going to the counties. So like where it says Olwine Community School District, these are those ESSER funds that went to schools to help with like, to buy cleaning supplies, to help with additional janitorial staff, different things like that that the schools could use to help with COVID mitigation. And then you can see there's going to be individuals that are named. Those individuals are small business owners, and they are people who received these funds. So cities, small businesses, there's a lot of restaurants that received monies. And then again, like I said, you'll see, you know, the cities and the counties. And then you can look at, you know, just by clicking on it. So the city of Fayette, and then it'll share with you how much they got. And then, you know, it will talk about like some of it as like a childcare, or some of it as a school. Some of them are restaurants. So you can click on each of those and just kind of see where those funds ended up. So it's a good way for you to look at exactly where those American Rescue Plan funds are going, specifically in your community. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. And like I said, all of this will be shared with you. It's taken me a couple of times, and I even practiced this before today, just to go through this website, because it is a little tricky if you don't like click all the right things. So if you feel like you're getting frustrated, you can reach out to me. And then we also have really great partners at ruralorganizing.org. And Sarah Kruger is amazing, and she can work with you and help you through this as well. So I just wanted to share with you how to find those allocated American Rescue Plan funds. The next piece of this that I want you to think about as you're talking about, these ARPA funds, and as you're writing this letter to the editor, is know your audience. Anticipate how your message might be received. A letter that I'm going to write in rural Fayette County is going to be very different than a letter that I might write in Lynn County, simply because the demographics are different, the audience is different. I need to know who I'm writing to and how the audience might anticipate or how I might anticipate the audience receiving that message. And then just make sure that we're talking about this in a positive way. The American Rescue Plan is what it looks like when our government works for the people. The American Rescue Plan is what it looks like when our electeds follow through on those promises that they made to the people of America. So we can talk about it as a positive, we can talk about it as a good thing. And then again, knowing who our audience is. One of the things that was brought up in our training last week was someone said, I would have a really hard time talking positively about Joe Biden in my specific area of the state, because that might not be well received. So a way to talk about it might be, I can't believe my representative voted against this. I can't believe Ashley Hinson voted against money for childcare. I can't believe Randy Feenstra voted against money for small businesses and restaurants. So we can take that and still make it a positive by talking about how our representatives didn't support that or how they didn't vote for that. So again, that goes back to anticipating how your message might be received. So when I structure letters to the editor, I try to use a formula, talking about, like Katie mentioned, that shared value. What can we all get behind? What do Iowans believe? What do we think? What is it that unites us, or what is it that brings us together? Who's the opposition to this? Like Katie said, what's that hurdle that we have to overcome? Not something that's going to stop us. We can't get over a barrier we can't get past, but what is it that we need to overcome? And then always kind of going back to that point. Why is this important? Why does it matter? And then the last part is sort of that vision for the future. What happens when we get this, or what does it look like when we achieve this? So it's just kind of a formula to use to help structure that letter to the editor. So taking Katie's messaging and putting it to use. So our point, Iowans deserve a fair shot at the American dream and communities our kids can thrive in for decades. What is the problem? Certain legislators, including Grassley, and you can put your representative in here unless you live in Cindy Axne's district, they aren't looking out for us while the cost of everything skyrockets. Corporate greed is out of control, but we're struggling. With the American Rescue Plan, we received relief and we were able to afford the basic necessities. So that's the impact of this. And then finally, the solution or the call to action. Representative Cindy Axne supported and President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act funds to help parents and people of Iowa with a child tax credit extension and relief checks. So that's what it looks like when our government is working for the people. So what this might look like in a letter to the editor. When you're writing those letters to the editors, just make sure you know your word count. The Des Moines Register is 200, the Cedar Rapids Gazette is 250. The Council Bluffs paper is probably the most generous. They're right around 400. So make sure you're aware of what that word count is before you start writing, but right around 200 words, 250 is a good place to aim. I raised my kids in Iowa because I thought they'd have a more fair shot at the American dream. Owning a home, raising a family, finding a job respects them and pays them what they're owed. But these days it keeps getting harder. My kids can hardly afford their education debt, and jobs today just don't pay enough. How are we supposed to afford groceries, housing, and everything else when corporations that don't pay enough are jacking up prices and calling it inflation? Thank goodness President Biden helped. He knows it's us working families who need the cash. His American Rescue Plan Act funds, money went straight to working families, helping us afford groceries during the pandemic. It's even increasing childcare, helping us get back to work. If this bill failed, Iowans would have struggled even worse, but Senator Grassley still voted against it. As a senior senator, he's been there for decades. Grassley should be able to deliver for working families in Iowa. His opposition to this bill is a kick in the gut. But Biden's bill proves we can get what we need. We simply need to elect leaders who will put working families first. I encourage my fellow Iowans to show up for legislators who supported this bill. Sadly, the only one Iowa member of Congress did that, Cindy Axne. And you can, address it like that, where you can sign it, or most letters you have to put your name and your address to. I don't know of any paper that allows you to submit anonymously. And Katie, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and kick it back to you. And you're on mute, Katie.
Just talking to myself. I get really confused when full screen mode disappears and I lose the document I'm working on. Here we go again. Share screen. This guy. Actually, I know that I'm already anticipating that's going to screw things up. Share screen and just, share that guy. So I think now you should be able to see when I catch up to that slide. When I click in here, this should share. You're seeing my whole screen, right? Okay, sometimes it just picks us the tab. All right, so these talking points here, you can access this link. We'll send all of this with you. It's in the slide. All of these numbers and talking points are put together polling data that we received from the White House predominantly, and then anyone else that was sharing information on the American Rescue Plan. And then it puts it into talking points that you can use. You can use these in your letters to the editor, talking to friends and family, kind of merging it with any message guidance that you find on iowavoices.org. But these are some of the top line numbers that came out of the American Rescue Plan Act that helped Iowa. And so when you take the funds that you can find on the website that that Amy was showing you, those funds that went directly to cities, counties, business owners, when you add that to what the governor was given to give to the state of Iowa, that's nearly $5 billion in federal support. That's a big reason she's able to do anything right now, in addition to corporate handouts to who. So increases in the child tax credit, increases to SNAP benefits, extra stimulus checks, emergency rental assistance, broadband, housing infrastructure, water infrastructure. A lot of her big announcements have been thanks to Biden's infrastructure bill that she campaigned against. And then also, some of the statistics, Biden created more jobs in his first year as a president than any president has ever done in their first year. Out of that, Iowa got 24,700. We got almost 10,000 new businesses. We helped almost 1,000 restaurants open. Just lots of great benefits coming from this bill that, this can be weedy stuff that's hard to find. The White House gave it to us, so we made it even easier to digest. And then here are the talking points that we put together just to kind of help people talk about it and not have to come up with that on your own. If I go back, you can also check out our guide on how the Biden bill works for working families. You can literally say that in your LTE. That's a great line. Biden bill works for us. And then we kind of just go through just so that people, you might be talking about these funds a year from now. These funds are not all getting spent all at the same time. So in a year from now, when you've gotten through an election and a ton of other issues that you care about, if you want to come back and talk to ARPA, you can get a quick refresher on this, that it happened March of 2021, that it pumped money into every corner of Iowa, that it helped, everyday Iowans, and then kind of go back to our research takeaways and message guidance, because you can go through pretty much everything I just said in our research takeaways by just scanning, how our tests did, what they told us. And then I always have our key message guidance up ahead of our messages, starting with the value statement, defining the opposition, leaning into emotion and repetition. I know repetition feels funny a lot of the time. I've gotten used to it. It's really important. Just keep repeating things, because it really takes, a number of times for you to say something for it really to sink in with folks. And then you've got our winning messages that resonated with most folks, that sample letter to the editor, and some sample social media too. So I can click through these if you want to.
Yeah, that sounds good. So, the reason we're holding these trainings and the reason we're, doing this letter to the editor stuff tonight is we want you to use this. This is created for people to use. Share this with your groups, share this with your county parties, share this with your communications team. Whoever it is that you're working with, we want you to use this. And like Katie said, repetition is so important. We cannot consistently be on the defense and using the opposition's talking points. We have got to toot our horn. Like, we have got to share what it is that's working, because the American Rescue Plan is this really, really big chunk of money that is going to a lot of different places. And so there's a lot of ways that we can talk about this, and there's a lot of good that's being done in our communities, but people don't know about it unless we're talking about it. So we've got to talk about it. Having conversations, writing letters to the editor. So that's the next step. That's what we want you to do. We want you to take this information. We want you to take Katie's guides, and we want you to write letters to the editor, to encourage other people to write letters to the editor. We are here to help you. Katie is the message master, and I can help you get those letters to the editor placed. I can help you with editing those. So we want to work with you. We want to help you to get those letters into papers, because like I said at the beginning, there's value. There's emotional value, but then there's also dollar value to these letters, right? It's free advertising. So we've got to use it. So there's links here. Like I said, you'll get this information to all of the papers. These are by current congressional districts. So the congressional district that you're currently in, not the new one for the next congressional session. But it has all of the newspapers. So you have all those links of where to submit it. And then there's a couple of other ways that we can help out too. So every Monday I meet with a group of letter writers, and Jan is a part of that group. But we meet at 4 p.m. Even if you can't meet at 4 p.m., get on my email list so you can see current events and topics that we're talking about. And every time Katie has a new guide that comes out, I share that with my letter writers so we can use that. So we're talking about those issues that we want to talk about. So if you want to go to the next slide, Katie. You'll have both of our email addresses. I'll share the information with you if you want to join our Facebook group. On the Facebook group, we share letters that have been published. It's a way to kind of celebrate and highlight the good work that's going on. But please join. Please encourage others to join, and please try to spread the message of the good that's happening with the American Rescue Plan funds and how those are being used in the community.